They told me that it would start. Okay. So I've been a collector for as long as I can remember. My mother and I started collecting at the same time. Our confirmation of one another's collections drove our enthusiasm. My mom collected Hall autumn leaf pottery. I collected what I liked. I collected what I could afford. I collected what I discovered. I collected what I yearned for. I collected things that were useful. And in the beginning, I collected chainmail handbags and Fiesta pottery. My professor in graduate school was Leslie Lipe. I had never met anyone quite like him. When we first met, he was wearing pink jelly shoes. Leslie trained my eye and challenged my thinking. A collector himself, he helped focus my collections. Today, I consider myself a steward of objects that reflect who I am and where I come from. I collect a lot of things that don't get a second look for most people. Fortune-telling cups, Hall teapots, Bakelite, anything Bakelite, to bride and groom wedding toppers. Oh, and in all honesty, my tendencies sometimes lead toward the absurd. I collect bowling balls. But that said, I'm most passionate about making, collecting, and wearing art jewelry. So this is something I'm sure I gleaned from Leslie, because you see, Leslie was never embarrassed to wear it. Like Leslie, I too am attracted by art jewelry's overtness. In my way of thinking, jewelry is public art. I have an obligation to collect art jewelry and support art jewelers. After all, I've spent more than 33 years of my life in academia, teaching others how and why to make it and why it's so very important. On a summer's evening, my best friend bent down on one knee and asked me to marry him. He opened a black velvet box and presented me with not a ring, but an engagement pin. The thick, silhouetted figures are characteristic of all of Christina Smith's work. I really wanted that brooch. My collecting modus operandi is activated at the moment when my neural connectors are engaged and everything else ceases to exist. These especially thrilling moments provide me with clues about the extent that I want it. Only on occasion do I collect out of sentimentality. I worked alongside Arlene Fish at San Diego State University. I have the utmost respect for her, and I acquired this brightly colored machine-knit ruffled cuff bracelet. My artwork has been published in Metalsmith magazine, and it graced the cover of American Craft. Each of these pieces were snapped up by collectors. I sold them over the phone, sight unseen. I'm not that kind of collector because I need to experience the object. Christmas morning, 2001, was a bit of a letdown. I received this. I had recently given birth to my first son, and in retrospect, of course, I lovingly recall the morning. So the following Christmas, I was undeniably nervous. I opened a nondescript box, and tucked inside was the most incredible Miriam Hiller necklace. Simultaneously simplistic and complex matte enamel, this object broke my heart. I've been fond of her work for a very long time. Natalia Penchuk was one of my grad students at the U of I. She explored the tensions inherent in our relationship to nature and the artificial. I collected several of her pieces, including these hairy woolen necklaces from her Booster series. And Dutch jeweler Ted Noten. We have a mutual respect for one another. I visited Ted's Amsterdam studio wearing bright red pins from his Mercedes brooch series. He actually acquired a Mercedes Benz new and cut it up and rendered it into pins. I stumbled upon the work of Masumi Katoka. After hearing her speak about her work, I decided to purchase a piece. Her manipulation and transformation of animal hide into a fleshy, visceral, intestinal, organic form was sparked when she observed her dog sculpting a rawhide shoe. And Natalia introduced me to Susan Matchy, a jeweler from Berlin. I commissioned her to fabricate a filigree ring in silver. I respect her discreet and humble aesthetic and superb craft. Dan DiCaprio makes jewelry in wood and precious metal. His forms are reminiscent of plant and animal anatomy. He uses fine silver wires to visually suggest hair and cells. I was drawn to the seductive qualities of his brooch. Sometimes I'm able to acquire pieces through exchange. I was fortunate to be paired with a young Korean jeweler through a project called the Jewelry Exchange. She received my piece on the left, and I acquired her leather and sterling silver necklace. Collecting art jewelry is reliant on the creative activities of others. Conversely, collectors provide artists with reassurances. Every collector has a story to tell, and our motivations vary. I've told you a handful of stories about a handful of my favorite objects. Thank you.